saying you could travel back in time.
But Bruce, I can fix things. I could save people. I could save my mom. I could save your parents.
You can also destroy everything.
Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is my review of the Flash movie, and I do want to say welcome to all your new subscribers and hit that like button on this video. It really helps the channel out. So guys, was this a good film or not? And sure, that's probably the first thing you're going to be asking me. Was it actually a good film? Do I need to go and see it? Yes, you do need to go and see it. It is a very good film, but it does have its problems. Thankfully, it's not loaded with issues like many other comic book films. It's full of goodness and eye candy as well, and the film has been in development problems for years, several years, and its main star's downward spiral has been widely condemned by all. Yet this film is remarkable. It's a remarkable vision that emerges Andy Muschietti into the upper echelon of comic book filmmaking. He's going to get some big business after this, and he's actually just bagged the Batman Brave and the Bold movie by Warner Brothers and James Gunn. So really looking forward to seeing how he develops. But the development of this Flash film started actually in the late 1980s with multiple writers, directors attached to the project all the way through to 2014. That's how long it's been, guys. Now in the comics, it's revealed that Flashpoint was a result of Barry going back in time to save his mother's life from her mysterious murderer. Now if you know your Flash lore, you'll know that Nora's murder is tied to the existence of Barry's greatest enemy, Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash. Does that mean he killed Nora West in this film? Yes, it does. But that's also why we didn't need to see him in this film. This is Flash's story, not Eobard Thawne's. This is in terms of how Flash deals with the mental health of losing his mother. But the problems may have also been at the cost that this film is ending the DCEU. And in post-production, Warner Brothers clearly didn't want to add any more CGI work to enhance the visuals. Something which is a big part of all comic book films and non-comic book films in general. A lot of films have reshoots and post-production visual work. This film didn't look like it had any of it. They were just in a rush to get rid of the DCEU and move on to the DCU. So I think, look, it was suggested a couple of months ago when I saw the screener that the film that was shown was incomplete and that the finished film would appear better, but that isn't the case. Muschietti in an interview this week said that the weird look of the film CGI was done on purpose. He actually said, "We are in the perspective of the Flash. Everything is distorted in terms of lights, textures. We enter a water world which is essentially being viewed in Barry's point of view. It was part of the design of the film, so he wanted it to look a little bit of cartoony in that way." Well, they definitely succeeded. I'll take his word for it, but only because it happened at Flash time. In all the other parts of the film, the CGI looked good. It was just when the Flash was using his powers, it just looked weird. But outside of the effects, the film is incredible, guys. The acting and the story, the plot, it all works wonders. For me, this makes Miller one of the best actors we've seen in the DCEU. Think about it. Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill aren't as talented as Miller as an actor. And in this film, you see him flexing his acting chops. Speaking of Gal Gadot, by the way, we do see her save the day in this film. When things are about to hit the fan, she's there and she saves the day in a big way. Now her scene was less than a minute, but it was nice to touch base with her considering in Shazam and in this film, she's done so much more in so little time. You have to feel cheated by the events of her last film, Wonder Woman 2. Now, plenty of films have used special effects to have one actor play twin characters. But Miller is so good in this role that you actually think there are two different people from two different times. He's particularly adept at doing double Barrys in ways that we've not really seen recently. He really does sell it, guys, and that for me is what made the whole film. The Flash movie depends more on absorbing the plot and believing these two personalities, and he pulls that off. It just shows what a class actor he is. Now, in a fit of emotion, And considering Barry, who is now at full control of his powers, he can phase through walls and he can control his speed. I mean, he's at the height of his powers right now. He decides to go back in time, despite Bruce Wayne's warnings, Ben Affleck, that time travel can have unintended consequences. He still goes back to the day of Nora's death and prevents it from happening. And this is where the movie starts to get very smart. Once he changes the timeline for his mother to live, an unknown figure knocks him out of the Speed Force, and Barry ends up in an alternate timeline of 2013, where his mother is alive and he finds his past self and realizes he has arrived on the same day that he originally obtained his powers. Remember, if Barry saves his mother, his father doesn't go to jail, and Barry doesn't become a CSI agent trying to prove his innocence, meaning he doesn't become the Flash and get hit by lightning. So it's smart writing. This is what really pushes the envelope. A good script doesn't need to be a story that's never been heard before. As long as the acting complements that script, both will succeed in tandem. The craft of screenwriting has a lot to do with understanding the structure of a story and being able to create beginnings, middles and ends. This is what Andy Muschietti does well in this film. It's understanding that a story has a plot line that has a direction and it has subplots that feed and intersect and integrate in within that plot line. And that's what this film does. There's so many memorable moments, like the baby shower scene at the start of the film, where Barry has to catch several babies falling out of a building. And then Barry's attempt to assemble the Justice League when he finds out Zod is coming and realizes that in this timeline he's unable to locate Diana. Victor Stone hasn't had his accident, and Arthur Curry was never born. He actually phoned Arthur Curry's father, and when he talked about you was married to a Queen of Atlantis, he looked on the sofa and there was his wife sitting down there who was nothing like her. So that was quite alarming. But they convinced this Earth's Bruce Wayne, which is Michael Keaton, to help find Kal-El. But when they get to Kal-El, they find out that he was killed by General Zod on his way to Earth. And it was Kara Zor-El that had the codex of Krypton inside her body. Now Kara and Bruce join the two Barrys to fight General Zod's forces. And we learn that no matter what happens, this Earth will fall. And Batman and Supergirl will also die. And the weird thing about this, guys, is it wasn't just General Zod and his two lieutenants that turned up. It was a whole army of Kryptonians. There was at least 10, 20 Kryptonians that was traveling with them. So it was just always going to be too much. Now, the two Barrys, realizing that Supergirl and Batman have died, they travel back in time to save their companions, but they're unable to change their fates. Our Barry realizes that they will not be able to save them, and as his mum used to say to him, you have to let go. But the young Barry for 2013 keeps on trying, repeatedly traveling back through time, but always failing. The universe, guys, starts to collapse in on itself. We see Henry Cavill Superman for the second time. The first was in a volcano scene at the beginning of the film, and then in the Speed Force in this flashback scene. We even see him fighting the Justice League. We also see Christopher Reeve's Superman appear in the multiverse, standing next to his cousin, Helen Slater's Supergirl. And guys, the biggest Easter egg of all.
That's kind of neat, because it kind of has like a velvet look to it. Just like a child's blanket. We know we're doing a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Like we don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
It's not too much.
Yeah. I think you want to see this in its entirety without it kind of going into.
Did you design the S-Team?
That's the whole thing. We would make it reminiscent of whatever we see on Krypton. That's the whole.
My father wore this cape. So
This cape was handed down to me.
this cape comes from a long line of Kryptonians who were at the top of their field in science and law.
We see Nicolas Cage. He appears in his cancelled Superman Lives character's costume, which I need to talk about. This was back in the 90s when Kevin Smith wrote a Tim Burton Superman Lives script starring Nicolas Cage as Clark Kent. He was, there's YouTube videos where you can see him wearing a costume and everything else. The film underwent a lot of pre-production. They spent a lot of money on this film before being cancelled after many rewrites and disagreements between the studio and the writers. Now, Warner Brothers said it was stupid because it had Superman fighting a giant robot spider. Then guess what? That same spider who we beat in this film is the same one they were talking about in the original script, making it one of the most hardcore fan Easter eggs in the entire film. We also see Adam West's 1960s, 70s Batman in there. And we see George Reeves, the original Superman who appears in black and white, which I thought was kind of stupid, considering the series was also shot in colour. And plus, colour is the real world view anyway. Black and white is only what you view things through television. So why would we see a black and white image of him in the Speed Force? That made no sense. Either way, guys, I loved all those cameos, except for this one. We saw a golden age version of Jay Garrick wearing a tin hat, and it was Teddy Sears. Teddy Sears was chosen as the iconic Jay Garrick after the actor did so in the CW show. But what makes no sense is that his character on the TV show was actually Hunter Solomon, not Jay Garrick. So to have a Flash movie and go back in time and not even feature a Flash character in John Wesley Skipp, who's been playing the Speedster since 1990, and the recent one in Grant Gustin, who's just finished a 9-year run, not to have either of those two in a film? Man, that's disrespectful, guys. Now, as far as Barry's relationship with Iris, we saw in the Snyder Cut that Barry had a scene with Iris. She didn't really see him, it was a blink of an eye, but he saw her. But she actually remembered that scene in this movie. That scene is referenced by her. Because remember, they don't actually know who each other is. So Barry officially meets Iris West here, and it ends with the romance building between the two. So Barry undone the changes he made to the timeline in his mother's death, and he comes to terms with his mother and the fact that he's going to lose her forever. However, he does make a minor change in the past, which creates new evidence in the present day that proves Henry West, his father, he proves he's innocent. So when he goes back to his normal universe in the DCEU, that slight change messes up the timeline again. When he speaks to Bruce Wayne on the phone, he's expecting to see Ben Affleck's version, but the version he sees that steps out of that Mercedes concept car is George Clooney. Yes, guys, George Clooney's universe being Bruce Wayne instead of Ben Affleck. We also see some wonderful Easter eggs in this film. There's tons, ranging from Joker's laughing bag from the 1989 Batman film, and obviously Danny Elfman's Batman score as well. We also see a scene where Barry just got his powers and he was actually in Metropolis during the Man of Steel movie when the World Engine scene was happening, and he was there trying to save somebody and he can only save the child and not the parent. And that really hit him for six, that did. And also, we get a reference with his race with Superman from the Justice League movie, where he tells his younger self that Kryptonians are fast, but the Flash is faster. This means in that post-credit scene, when Henry Cavill raced our version of Flash, the Flash won. So guys, I give this movie an 8.2 out of 10. The Flash deals a lot with the concept of fixed points, critical moments in the timeline that can't be easily undone. Marvel's Doctor Strange doesn't really pull that off as good as they do in this film. And it's because Michael Keaton's Batman explains time travel like noodles. He explains it in a way that makes more sense. That reality exists as a mass of different strands. And in that time, they flow alongside each other and sometimes cross over or intersect. With so many strands flowing in and out of one another, it's all but impossible to know where one timeline ends and the other begins. And I really did like that understanding. So that's why Barry's trip back in time was so dangerous. He's meddling with the forces his mind can't fully comprehend. And us, the viewer, we've seen so many time travel stories, but none of them is explained as good as this. The movie makes it clear that time travel doesn't have a linear effect on the timeline. If you change the present, the past will also be affected, and it will reverberate forward and backward across time, causing ripple changes in both directions, past and future. Which brings us on to the end of the film, and how the DCEU universe is now closed and shut down. Barry has now transferred into a different universe where George Clooney's Batman exists, and it branched some of the DCEU's universe into it. The new DCEU, as James Gunn explained, will be a mixture of the old DCEU and a new universe entirely. So there's no limit to how different alternate universes can be made and formed from one another. They might have alternate versions of characters like The Flash, Batman and Superman, or those characters might not even exist at all. So guys, that's my review of The Flash. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one. Peace out.